Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Minding My Mental Health. I am Tenetria Williams, and I am so excited that you are joining us today. You know what I want you to do. I want you to hashtag live if you are watching us live. Let us know where you're watching from. You'll know you're watching live because it will say live at the top of your screen. If you're watching the replay, that's okay too. Hashtag replay. Again, let me know where you're watching from. Share this video, tag your friends, tag your family, share it to your stories, to your page, all of that good stuff. Why? Because we want to get the word out, because every episode, our goal is to tear down the stigma of mental health and bring awareness to our community of ways that we can help be stronger, more resilient individuals, right? And so again, thank you guys for joining. I want to welcome my guest, another clinician who I think is going to bring a lot of great information. So everyone, will you put your hands together for Miss Soneakqua White? Soneakqua, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I like to give people a few minutes to jump on, because sometimes they are a little slow. So at this time, we'll allow people a few moments to begin to share and all of that good stuff. While they are doing that, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us, obviously I said your name, but tell us about your licensure, kind of what you do, who you are as a person.
Okay. My name is Soneakqua White. I am a licensed professional counselor in the states of Texas and Ohio. I do have a coaching practice as well, and that's where I do the social and emotional learning. It's more strategy rather than therapy. That practice is called Cathartic Coaching and Consulting. I am a lover of Jesus. And I am also a writer. So a lot of the things that I work with my clients on, I also write content for them to have and for us to do homework assignments or journey work, whatever you like to call it. So those are some of the things that I am very interested in, that I am working on right now.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That sounds really interesting. So you do a lot of a narrative work and having people to write different things. So I love that. I hope you give us more strategies as we're going to talk through some of these things.
Absolutely.
You said you're in Ohio, you're licensed in Ohio and in Texas. So if you
Yeah.
guys you know of somebody in Ohio or Texas that's looking for a clinician, you know what? I just talked to someone who was looking for somebody licensed in Texas.
Okay.
Um, so I may have to send somebody your way. I'm glad you said that. So again, if you
Absolutely.
guys know of someone who's looking for a clinician in Ohio or Texas, look up Soneakqua. I think she would be an excellent resource for you guys. So let's really get into this topic. So today's topic, we're talking about social and emotional learning, which is something that I don't think we ever outgrow. And I think it's something we have to start focusing on at an early age and continue that growth and development. But for a lot of people, that concept is still relatively new. Can you explain what we mean when we're talking about social and emotional learning, and the value um, of teaching it, and kind of for people who may be unfamiliar with that?
Okay. Social and emotional learning is kind of our way of looking at how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to other people, especially when it comes to our social interactions and our own mental health, our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings. Because a lot of times we don't really understand how we're feeling or what we're feeling. So
Mhm.
we can't help other people understand how we're feeling. And with culture, we say a lot of cultural things, a lot of cliches things like, I feel some type of way. Well, that's not really a feeling. So when you say that, we have to work through some of those things to discover what we really are feeling. So SEL, or social and emotional learning, helps us with some of those things. And I love it because it's a proactive way of getting our mental strength and our mental fortitude in place. And like you said earlier, at a very young age, SEL can start developmentally at birth. So if you have young children, you can learn these concepts and start with your kids before they even get to school.
That's awesome. I love that you said that, because I used to say that all the time, especially when that phrase was really popular. Oh, I feel some type of way. And I would say, the clinician in me has a real hard time with you saying that. What type of way do you feel? Can you put a word to
Exactly.
that?
Yes.
And people don't always understand the value of even just that, being able to put a word to the feeling itself, the power that that can bring to an individual to be able to say, I feel this particular thing, as opposed to just saying, I have a lot of feelings. Well,
Yes.
what are those feelings? Because then we can start delving into how to deal with those feelings once we can actually identify. I share this story a lot. One time, my little one, she fell, and I mean, she was probably under 3. I know
Okay.
that. So somewhere in there, and she fell off of one of her little toys. And when she fell, she immediately started crying. But it was a very low toy, and she still had a diaper on, so it was like it didn't actually hurt her, but it
Mm-hmm.
scared her, and she
Mm-hmm.
started crying. And I remember we asked her, "Did it scare you, or are you hurt?" And she kind of paused, and she said, "It scared me." And so we recognized, we said, so you actually aren't hurt. And she was, it was kind of like, oh, no, I'm not. I was just startled. And once we
Mm-hmm.
helped her to realize you're not hurt and you're okay now that you recognize that it just startled you a little bit. She didn't have to cry. Not that we were opposed to her tears, but we wanted
Yeah.
her to understand, oh, once I identified what it was, it actually impacted the way I responded. And so I think people
Yes.
need to be able to see the value of being able to identify feelings and being able to process those things.
Yeah.
Um, so this again is something for a lot of people that may not have necessarily heard about. What led you into this path to focus on SEL?
I think it was the proactive measure. Therapy, as therapists, we are typically dealing with people on the back end of the
Mhm.
trauma where they need to recover and heal. Well, social and emotional learning helps us get on the front end and maybe stop the train before it goes off the track. And so that's kind of what led me to it. And I typically counsel with mostly adults, but I saw such a need for younger people, teens and young adults, to get their mental strength, those strategies and coping skills in place, that is what really drew me to SEL. Because as a therapist, I'm seeing all of the things that happen when you don't have these strategies in place. So that's kind of what led me and what makes me passionate about it.
Yeah. How many years have you been doing this work, specifically
um,
with the social emotional learning?
That has been new, very new. That's only been within the last 3 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it was my move from Texas to Ohio, where it got me into seeing more of my family, seeing more of the younger people, and then getting out into different spaces and seeing what was really happening, and not happening. So it kind of led me to switch some things around, even in my practice, where I was able to add the strategy and coaching along with the therapy.
Okay. I love that. So, obviously, as clinicians, like you said, we often see things more from the back end. We see
Yeah.
people after they've experienced a trauma, after things have happened in their life. Can you share how does trauma impact the social emotional learning of a person?
Yeah. So trauma, if you're looking at it like your little one was 3, or before 3, and something happened, it wasn't super traumatic, but it was to her in that moment. So if you have someone, no matter what age they are, and then a trauma takes place that does not get resolved or does not get processed, often we stop or get stunted emotionally and sometimes mentally in that place where the trauma happened. So we keep growing physically, we age, we still can work and do all the things, but the way we respond or react to things somehow sometimes takes a huge hit because there was a trauma that got engaged somewhere in our lives, and maybe even before we even had any social and emotional learning skills or strategies. And so often we don't even know that we need the help, or that somebody should help us, or whatever the case may be. So we grow up, we age, that is, without really growing up sometimes in certain areas. So when you have trauma, your SEL is going to be affected, but the more skills and strategies you have, you could lessen the effect. Not that the trauma won't be painful, or not that you will be able to always avoid it, but it will lessen the impact if you have skills and strategies.
I love that. And I also love something that you said stood out to me was the fact that people aren't always, sometimes trauma happens at such a young age, people aren't able to even identify it because
Mhm.
it was before they had language to be able to put these things into place.
Yeah.
If you were abandoned as an infant, that was impactful, though at 15 you don't remember that, right? And
Yeah.
so I tell people all the time, because oftentimes they're unaware of how much childhood actually impacts how we are in our
Yeah.
everyday life. And so
Yeah.
I love that you were so clear in how you were able to explain, hey, sometimes you can stop at a certain age developing mentally and socially and
Hmm.
emotionally, and we're still aging physically. And so we have
Yeah.
a lot of adults walking around who have some emotional places in their life where they're still 15 or 12 or 8. um,
Yeah.
and so again, I'm looking forward to hearing some of your ideas and strategies. What would you say is a sign for a person to know that this is some work that they need to do? Like how does someone at 23 recognize I maybe I do need to call Soneakqua and work on learning more social and emotional intelligence?
I would say a lot of the things that have to do with our general life skills, like if you find yourself unable or if it's difficult for you to communicate your thoughts, feelings, or whatever, if you struggle to manage money, if maybe struggle in your workplace, you don't do well with interviews, there's some behavioral issues maybe, you're acting out in ways that you realize is probably not healthy, but you're not quite sure how to fix it, what to do about it. So you kind of just keep going on in what you're doing. So, like things that would help us to be successful in everyday life, if you're not managing those things well, or if you're not hitting those things that you really have in your mind that you want to do, but you seem to be struggling getting there, those I would say would be some signs that maybe some SEL needs to happen.
Okay. So that would be for an adult. What about a parent who's raising their child, and what are some signs that maybe they could look for to say, this is something I need to learn so I can either teach my child or I need to enroll them in some work? What are some of those signs?
Definitely parents need to learn so that you know what your child is going through. And so with kids it's going to be a lot more emotional and a lot more behavioral, where because often they don't have words or language anyway, so you're going to see more emotion and more behavior. So if you're having some behavioral issues that are across the board, like sometimes you'll see issues in one place but not in another, so there's maybe something different going on there. But if you're seeing behavioral issues across the board, if you're seeing any things, like think of developmental milestones that you would get from like your
Mhm.
pediatrician, if some of those things aren't being hit, there might be some social and emotional learning things that could help with those particular milestones. So just being aware and intentionally looking for certain things in your children, but mainly the younger you are, the more behavioral it would be.
Mhm.
Um, Even with teens, so their anxiety or their depression may look more like anger than
Right.
anything else. So
Mhm.
it doesn't look like what you would think it is. So sometimes you have to ask direct questions if they're old enough to,
Mhm.
have words to things.
Okay. So, what are some things? I'm a parent, I have two, um, and we are a blended family, and it's been very interesting blending the family, right?
Mhm.
Both girls were only children, and so coming into this different world, different life experiences, what are some things that parents may be doing that um, I guess you would say could hinder the SEL for children?
Okay. I would always tell parents to engage with your children, like intentionally having them talk. because the more that you learn to communicate, the better we can find out, okay, are there deficits? And if there are, what are they? Can you even communicate those? Or can I pick up on it as a parent?
Mm-hmm.
Also, parents not ignoring things or blowing it off as, oh, that's just a kid thing, or oh, that's just a teen
That's
thing.
good.
It could be, but you really want to know if that's what it is or not, or if there is a deficit somewhere that can be helped at 10 before they get to 15 and they're bigger than you, and now we have some other types of issues. And so I think a lot of the times as well with younger kids, we allow them to do certain things that we kind of think is cute or funny, but only because they're little. But if they
Mm-hmm.
were older, that would definitely not be cute or funny. So sometimes you have to stop some of those things early, even though it's kind of cute or funny. You don't want it to continue.
Right. So you talked about deficits. So what are some of the deficits that maybe are getting categorized as, oh, that's just kid behavior? From a clinician, you go, ooh, I wish people understood that that's actually something to be addressed.
Um, I would say things like not being able to manage your emotions. So even if your emotion was sad, you're angry and it's over the top. So
Mm-hmm.
a parent or somebody may say, "Oh, they're just dramatic." Well, yes, it is dramatic, but there is a problem there because the emotion is actually sad and it's being expressed in anger.
Mm-hmm.
So there could be a communication deficit, or that this might be a child who feels like no one's listening unless I'm angry or I'm doing these things, then I'm getting attention. And sometimes what we may think of as attention seeking, in that, oh, they just want attention, you might need to find out, okay, why are they in need of
Mm-hmm.
attention rather than just, oh, they're just acting out. So some of the things that we think we want to blow off, and if we ignore it'll go away, often it does not, and then you have a bigger problem because you ignored it for a couple of years.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's great because I've worked with younger children, teenagers to adults, and I see some of the same things. It's, oh, it's just attention. Well, yeah, but it's still a need that they're expressing that they have, and we have to have not only teach them how to express that appropriately, but also sometimes working with parents to see, hey, they're asking for this attention. How can we meet that need in a healthy way? Now,
Yes.
obviously, this is 2024, and technology is literally all over.
Yes.
My husband and I talk sometimes about how different things were when we were younger, and we don't consider ourselves old, but we
Right.
can definitely see this generation is very different from us, right? So
Yeah.
with technology, what do you see as the impact of technology and social media when it comes to the development of the social emotional learning aspect?
Well, we can see some positives and some negatives, maybe more than others, depending on,
Hmm.
especially depending on how old your child is, or even in adulthood. Some of us adults don't handle it very well either. So, what I'm seeing a lot of is, yes, we get to connect with people more often, maybe easier from longer distances and those types of things. But what I'm also seeing is we are patterning certain things after people that we're seeing, and we don't even know whether it's real or
Hmm.
not. And that is concerning for teens and young adults alike, and even, even seasoned adults that don't have their SEL because they really never had it. And then we're so inundated with socials and technology that we start to believe things that may or may not be true. And then we start to pattern our behavior and our decisions off of those things. And we're really putting ourselves in detrimental situations sometimes because of that, because we don't have the skills to know, oh, that's kind of cool, but I shouldn't do it. So we're having people, no matter what age they are, looking at it and going, oh, that's cool. I should do that. And
Hmm.
we're having some issues.
How does a person develop the ability to distinguish, I should do that, I shouldn't do that?
Well, one of the things that I include in SEL is, boundaries. And so what your boundaries are, and even as a person of faith, if the person that I'm working with is also a person of faith, what are our boundaries biblically? Or
Mm,
what are your boundaries morally that would tell you this is not for you? Even if you see 50,000 people doing it, because of your standards, this isn't for you. And
mhm.
so that's one of the things that I work with individuals on. Yes, SEL is kind of an umbrella and it has components and competencies that we all should hit. But when you're looking at an individual, you have to look at cultural things, things of faith, and all of the things morally, biblically, whatever that you would have as a standard so that you know what you should and should not be doing.
So you brought up the fact that you are a woman of faith, and all of my viewers know that I am too. What is something that you see within the church that needs to be, I guess for lack of a better word, addressed or brought to the forefront when it concerns our development, when it comes to the SEL and our faith?
I One thing that I've been big on for a while is making sure the church stops saying just pray about it.
Hmm.
Whenever you pray, there's usually a corresponding action that you're going to get after you pray. And what it feels like is that you're blowing somebody off when they come to you with an issue
Hmm.
and you send them away saying just pray about it. And so, one of the big issues that I work with in therapy as well as SEL is what is religious trauma, what we would commonly know as church hurt. Um, One of those is often has to do with SEL, how you got hurt, has to
Mm.
do with your social and emotional learning and or the SEL of the other people who hurt you.
So talk more about that.
So if we're in our church and we're in ministry and we're doing whatever we're doing in ministry and someone goes off the rails and starts saying things or doing things that are hurting to other people. So I know that there is something going on with that person who is hurting people because they're doing this. This is an
Right.
acting out behavior. And I'm typically talking about adults right now. But so the person on the receiving end of that hurt, how they respond to it tells me a lot about where they
Mm.
are in their
Right.
SEL. Often we just up and leave the church. We don't even tell anybody what happened. We don't even try to
Yeah.
address it. We just bail. We're out. So one thing that we could work on in the church environment, because we do have a captive audience, is being intentional about adding SEL strategies in our ministries or in the church as a whole to where it becomes normal. That's one thing we talk about in the church is how we work together, and if and when we're offended, how we work through without
Mm.
somebody leaving or without it becoming this nightmare.
No, I think that's really good, because so many times those types of things are not addressed, whether that is on a like a small group kind of level from the pulpit. People just leave, or people just have these feelings that start to spill over a lot of different people in the congregation. I think that is, um, so important. And the other thing is, like you said, everyone, we all have an emotional self, right?
Hmm.
And so if we're not healed, if we have things if we lack some skills, if we have trauma that has stunted us at a different age, we're expecting, and I think that's important to recognize, people come to the church with an expectation of everybody should, and I'm big on the shoulds,
Right. Don't shit
or
on
not
yourself.
having the shoulds, right?
Yeah.
Um, and people come to the church with this expectation of everyone should be this way because we are Christians.
Yes.
And I think some of it is understanding that people come to the church with all of these various things:
Yes.
trauma, hurt, unresolved issues from their past, from just everything, right? And
Yes.
recognizing that just because I met someone in this building, in this facility, listening to the same pastor that I have, does not mean that we are actually together. We're not actually one. And being able to understand the different developmental levels of people within the church, emotionally, spiritually, this wide range,
Yes.
right? And all
Yes.
of it, and giving grace to ourselves, to other people. But it does take, like you said, strategy and skill, because even if I want to give you grace, if I've got some stuff in my heart that won't allow me to be vulnerable, or won't allow me to, I'm so afraid of getting hurt again. Maybe I want to give you grace, but my heart says, we don't do that. We stay
Right.
stone cold. And so I think it's important for us to say, maybe this is some work that we need to delve into a lot more from the church perspective, from at work. What about work? How are you seeing SEL stuff show up in people's career and all of that?
Sometimes you can look at it in corporate culture or call center culture, the clicky, being in cliques
Mhm.
and doing different things. When somebody walks into a room, everybody gets quiet, so they assume there's there's so much stuff that happens. But I think that in the work environments, we can do the same thing that we're doing in the church, minus the biblical standpoint is that being intentional about when we do team building activities, making sure that there is SEL involved in the team building. If we have a grievance session or whatever, if there's struggles going on, we don't just let it continue and
Mhm.
think that because, oh, everybody's an adult, they should be able to handle this on their own. Well, we have seen that that's just not the case. So instead of continuing to do that, let's intentionally put some things in place that will help us with that.
Okay, very good. I love that. Can you tell us how, as a society, what we can do to help teenagers, to help young adults, heck, help older adults to develop more fortitude and mental toughness or mental strength? Because a lot of times what I'm seeing is there is a lot of people who um, they're facing something, and it seems relatively um, simple for a lot of other people, but that particular person may really be struggling with overcoming that. What are some things that we can do as a society to help ourselves to become more mentally strong or emotionally strong?
And I think we were kind of touching on it with the different places where we need to add these strategies. So it needs to be in the home and it needs to be reinforced. So even if your kiddos or whoever is getting it in one area and then coming home or going to church or going into the community and not getting it reinforced in other areas, it's really, really hard to maintain if we don't have the consistency. So I think also the better we are, especially with self awareness and self management, we can be more mindful of other people.
Mhm.
If I'm not so absorbed in whatever my issues are going on at the time, I could see that you were struggling. So I think that we have to get better with not being, we have to be more of a community, like in looking out for one another.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean that you deny yourself, because I know there's some people that will take it to the extreme and
Right.
only focus on other people. So it's not that you deny yourself, but we also have to be mindful of who's in our environment, who we're around, who we're trying to do life with. And if we can make sure that everybody is doing well, then everybody will do well. And so when we have our own little circles, if our own little circle is good, they may have another circle that they're influencing and it just spreads and
Mhm.
gets bigger from there. So in every area, work, home, school, church, we need to have these strategies in place in some form of fashion. It doesn't have to be a curriculum. It doesn't have to be, all cut in place, but we need to be intentional about having it somewhere so that we get consistent, and we're we're making sure about being intentional about it.
Yeah. So you said it doesn't have to be a curriculum. So for a parent or just someone watching this episode and they say, how do I learn about this? And I could Google, but I don't know what's trustworthy through Google. Do you have any resources, or do you know of a place that would be a good resource for people to go and get more education on improving or growing in social emotional learning? That's my dog.
Absolutely. The dogs. Cassell.com, CASEL.com is kind of the mother company, if you will, of SEL. So you can get a lot of strategy from there, or a lot of things that they will do. It'll show you where there are resources available. You would want, if you have children in school, you'd want to check with their school to see if they are implementing SEL, because not all districts are created equal. Like some of them have it, and then not all the schools are created equal. So some of them here in Ohio, there are state standards, but they're not enforced. The districts do not have to implement it. So I would say ask your school district if you have school kids, Cassell.com. And then for my clients, I have written a workbook for facilitators and students. So the parents, you would get the facilitator's guide because it has answers in there that the kiddos don't have. So you can teach yourself
Mm,
while they're learning, and then you can help them understand what's going on. And I wrote the curriculum myself because sometimes when you look at just straight curriculum, there's no cultural sensitivity, and there's definitely not any faith-based anything.
mm.
So I wrote curriculum so that I could add those pieces in for the clients that I specifically work with. But it's out there on Amazon, so it's for anybody. I just write a lot so that I have something to work with my clients with.
Got you. So people couldn't buy what you've written, is what I'm hearing.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
they
you
can.
can.
Okay.
It's on Amazon. It's called Before You Grow Up, and grow is graduate ready to occupy the world.
Before You Grow Up, you guys look that up on Amazon. Before You Grow Up by Soneakqua White. If this is something you want to learn and grow in. So obviously, I really do try to live my life in a way that is consistent with what I teach.
Hmm.
Right. So for you, how has your own SEL practice influenced your personal and your professional life?
Whew, that's that's a big one. Professionally, I know that I have to, and I'm always learning. Like you said before, this is not a start and stop and end process that you finish. We're always learning, and so any new client I get, I find myself having to improve my SEL, and I always have to be on top of it so that I can help you with your
Mm,
strategy. I need to understand what I'm working with, what I'm dealing with, and have a level of competency in that area myself so that I can help you. And then personally, that's a little bit more complicated for me because I come from two sides of my family that have mental health struggles.
mm,
So I'm always aware of, okay, what's going on? What do I deal with? How am I, being self-aware and managing myself so that if I can prepare myself, the better prepared you are, the better your strategies will work in the event that you
right.
need them. So if I know that I'm going into a certain environment, I literally have to prepare myself to go into this environment. And then I have to be self aware enough to know that, okay, if my self management is starting to fail me, I gotta go, so I will give myself a time limit sometimes when I know I'm in an environment that causes me,
Mm,
to get more anxious than I normally would, or have, whatever response that I don't want. So I have to manage myself because I cannot manage other people.
Right. Say
That's
that again.
the and that's a big part of SEL is the first two are self-awareness and self-management. Then
Hmm.
you move on to everybody else. And so for me personally, keeping hold of those first two, being self-aware and able to self-manage enough to make sure that my boundaries remain intact and all the strategies that I have remain intact, and to be aware enough that if I feel like something is failing, my coping strategies are failing, I need to make an exit, before we have a meltdown.
Hmm.
So that's that's kind of where I am. And I'm constantly learning. And sometimes I intentionally put myself in environments that will test where
Mm.
I am. Because you can learn it, with
Right.
me in strategy session in this office, but then I need you to go out into the community and test it out so you can come back and tell me how you did. And so I
Hmm.
do that with myself. How did you do? How long were you able to remain in that environment before you started, failing?
So you said preparing helps. What does preparation look like for someone who says, I have my grandma's big birthday's coming up. I know my family has issues or I get triggered when I'm around them. What would be some things that they could do to prepare for grandma's big birthday party?
Okay. So you go in excited and hoping for the best, but you prepare for if any of your strategies start to fail you.
Hmm.
So if you're going to grandma's, you make a beeline to grandma because you don't know what else is going to happen. So you make sure that you do the thing that you were intending to do when you go to you prepare to make sure you get that in. And so I always tell people, okay, if you're going to a place where you know you might need to exit, drive your own car.
Hmm.
Don't hop in the car with other family where you may be held hostage and then
Hmm.
things start happening. So yeah, drive your own car. Make sure that you have, now this is the night before. So I'm preparing. If you need a week, then you take a week. But
Right.
at least the night before, take as much of the pressure off of yourself as you can. So if you know you're a person who runs late and your stress level is going to
Hmm.
intensify if you're running late, pick out your outfit the night before.
Mm.
Pick out two outfits in case the one you put on doesn't really work. Do the things that are going to take the stress down, your stress level
Right.
down as far as it can go, because you already know this situation you're going into could increase it. You don't want to be on 10, you have nowhere to go.
Right.
Fail, epic fail if you're if you're already on 10. So I work with people in SEL on kind of I call it an anger monitor.
Hmm.
Okay. Like when you woke up this morning, where were you? Let's move that down as far as we can get it. Because you have to go to work, you have to do this,
Hmm.
you have to do this, and you can tick up just by having to do those things. So to prepare yourself for whatever you have to do,
Hmm.
get your ticks down as far as you can get them before you even get there.
So you've mentioned coping skills. I talk a lot on the different broadcasts about coping skills. What are some coping skills that people um, that you've worked with seem to really connect with, or things that seem to be commonly effective?
I use a lot of journaling because I love writing. So I teach my clients to get in the habit of writing because you don't need someone else in order to do that.
Right.
And any coping strategy or skill that I would, recommend or suggest would be something that you can do on your own that doesn't cost a lot of money and that you could do at the drop of a hat. So a lot of my clients will go to the park and swing because they are in motion. And typically that's a little calming, especially if you have anxiety or something like that. The motion is very calming. So they will do that. So journaling, whatever you think of as a hobby. Some people like to draw. Some people like scrapbooking. That can get expensive, but if that's your thing, do that. So my top three are swimming, writing and watching movies on repeat. Like I've seen them 1,000 times, so
Hmm.
I don't have to think about what it is. It's just keeping me company.
Yeah.
So I will, is tell people to search their own lives. And a lot of times what I find is that people had coping strategies and then they got to feeling good or something derailed and they
Hmm.
stopped doing whatever it
What work?
was
Right.
that worked. So go back to that. It was working. You need to make that consistent. Consistency is the thing. You don't want to try to scramble and pick up a coping skill once the crisis has hit. You want to be in the habit of doing those things on a regular basis.
I like that. Yesterday, it was funny. I told my husband, I said, I'm about to do something and I understand it's going to look weird when I do it. And I just said, don't judge. And so I just kind of started moving around in the kitchen, almost like I was a track athlete or whatever. And he looked crazy. And my other child peeked around and she's like, what is she doing? And
Right.
I explained to him after it was over. I said, so here's the deal. I could feel tension in my body
Hmm.
and I needed to get it out, but I didn't want to go outside. And
Right.
so here it was. I just break out in this. I said, and then my endorphins are being released. Now I was doing that for two reasons: to actually release that tension from my
Hmm.
body, but
Hmm.
two, to also, I said that out loud for my child who was there. And I
Yeah.
said, because when I move, it releases chemicals in my body that actually helps me to feel better. Um,
Yes.
and so it was kind of lighthearted because I knew I looked ridiculous in the kitchen doing these, whatever I was doing, right?
Hmm.
Um, but it really did. It helped me. And
Yes.
again, I was using it for, hey, sometimes we do have these things going on internally. And
Hmm.
this is one of the things that I do. And I say, and then it becomes fun. And I
Hmm.
have now shifted my mood in a pretty quick, easy
Hmm.
way. And I was verbalizing what I was doing because my child was there.
Hmm.
And she's witnessing her mom do this. I don't even know what you would call it. I'm going to say track move,
Okay.
but it was really because with the other child, I just had a frustrating interaction. I could feel that tension. So I was like, I'm releasing. And it was a
Hmm.
matter of moments. And I was like, okay, I'm
Hmm.
feeling good. They were laughing. And it just shifted the mood of the situation, right? And so sometimes
Yeah.
I love that people can have those things that really are quickly um, available or readily available to them to be
Yeah.
able to say, I'm going to do this. Ooh, I feel this way. I'm going to do this right now. So I love that you say it's really individual because it really is for each person.
Hmm.
For you, you've been doing this for a couple years now. What would you say is some of the most rewarding work you've seen or experienced through working with SEL?
I would say, much like therapy, watching the light bulb come on, like them getting it and being able to there's not much that's more frustrating than wanting to communicate and you can't. So
Mhm.
when they realize, oh, this is what I can say, or this is how I could say this to get a different response, it's just the opening of those doors and almost freedom for the person, but for me on the other end, getting to watch them free themselves is super rewarding.
Yeah, I love the light bulb moments. I won't
Hmm.
lie, I do.
Hmm.
Um, so you talked about kind of having the therapy practice as well as the SEL coaching. How does a person know if they should maybe seek more therapy as opposed to just this, or maybe they need to do both? How would one decide kind of where their needs are?
I see that more people, they would rather go to strategy or coaching often rather than counseling or therapy. So sometimes I will start SEL as almost like a triage. You know how when you go to the ER and you know something's wrong, but you don't know what is wrong. So sometimes we'll start the SEL process and then I go, aha,
I see it.
that we need to, switch some things around. And I may, depending on what the situation is, I may refer them out because
Mhm.
not everything do I work on or work with folks in therapy. So I may find somebody for them to go to. If not, we'll just switch courses and say, hey, we've seen this, you've seen it too, we've run upon it. So this is something that requires therapeutic, like a
Mhm.
treatment plan, rather than just strategy. It doesn't mean that we won't put any strategies in place, because sometimes you need a strategy around you so that
Right.
you can heal. But yeah, I use SEL as an entry to some people who may be a little bit more squeamish about counseling, and I use it as a triage. So if they end up not needing counseling and we can correct it or do whatever we need to do with the strategy, that's perfectly fine. Or then I can at least talk to them about why I'm saying
Mhm.
counseling needs to happen rather than the SEL.
Gotcha. So, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe just starting their journey of self awareness, self improvement, self development, and they say, I'm interested in growing more in this area of social and emotional learning? What advice would you give someone kind of just starting on their journey?
I would say start. And when you start, give yourself some grace. That you, if you haven't known these things, then you don't expect for yourself to know everything like right now. You could be at a deficit, but that's okay. You're going to learn these things, and make sure that you don't go so fast that you do not develop consistency. So sometimes
Mm.
you may be on one component for months, but it's a building. That's the strategy, is building it so that you don't have to come back and pick this up again after you've already started it. You've got this one. Now let's move on to something else. And so if you find yourself, I mean, yes, you can do some of these things on your own, but if you find yourself struggling, getting frustrated with yourself and causing yourself more
Mhm.
anguish than you had before you started, ask for help. Reach out. There's no shame in asking for help. It doesn't mean that you did anything wrong. It
Right.
doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It's just we can all use help sometimes.
Okay, I love that answer. So I know we're ending. Anything that you want to share about SEL again that we didn't talk about, or maybe that just kind of popped in your brain as we were talking, that you'd like to kind of close out with?
I would just say that social and emotional learning, especially in the climate that we're in right now, politically and with the school shootings and everything that is going on, that everybody needs to take a look at where you are.
Mm,
You may have some of the strategies, you may have some coping skills, but we could always use additional ones, because you just don't know what we're going to come up against. And so you would rather have the tools in your toolbox, in your back pocket,
yeah.
rather than come up on the crisis and not know what to do. So I would say for everybody listening to just brush up on your skills if you have them. If you don't, let's go to work.
Yeah. And I think 2020 was a big eye opener for a lot of people to recognize that there were a lot of deficits that people weren't necessarily aware of, because it was
Mhm.
such a unique experience for so many people.
Yes.
Heck, for all of us, it
Yes,
was,
for all of us.
it was just,
Yeah.
oh, wow, we are in a pandemic and we can't really go freely the way we are
Yeah.
accustomed to. And I don't know how to talk to my brother who is in the house with me all the time, or my
Right.
cousin, or whatever. And so, yeah, I love that idea of prepare now, because you don't know what's around the corner. Tell us
Yeah.
about your business. How can someone get in contact with you if they are wanting some coaching, or if they want counseling and they're in Georgia, not Georgia, that's me. Um, if they are in Ohio or Texas, how would someone get in contact with you?
Everything is my name, Soneakqua J. White. So that is my website, soneaquajwhite.com, and all social media platforms. I am Soneakqua J. White. I have a YouTube. So if you just want to learn more about me and hear some more content, you can go to my YouTube. But my website or my email is the best way to reach me. And my email is sjw at Soneakqua J. White. I love my name. So you can find me anywhere.
Okay. So everybody give it up for Soneakqua White. Thank you so much. I think you brought a lot of valuable information. Give some hearts, give some fire for her. Go like her page, go look at her up on the website. Give her some support. Again, thank you so much, Soneakqua, for
Thank
being
you.
willing to come and share your time, your expertise, your knowledge with us. I just think there's so many things that people need to understand, and if we can bring some skills, some knowledge, some understanding to people, I want to be a part of that. And so I appreciate you coming on this show and helping me be a part of sharing all of those things. So again, thank you, everybody. Remember, next week we'll be right back here Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time for another episode of Minding My Mental Health. Share this. I know we are at the end, but go ahead and share it anyways. If you learned something, share this broadcast because someone may be able to catch the replay and get some really valuable information. So again, thank you. And I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.